So we're getting near the end of November. Nope, it's January. So that means tax time's coming up. I'm excited. I know you're all excited. And maybe you've decided to have a professional do your taxes this year. So what do you need? What does that mean? How does that work? If you've never worked with an accountant before on your personal taxes, then maybe you don't know how to start. So every accountant has their own way of doing things. Some of the things that we do are mandated by the CRA, but for the most part, accountants they create their own workflows, I guess is the best way to say that. So I'm just going to tell you about mine, and then you'll at least have an example about how to work with an accountant. So I start out by asking a few general questions just to get a sort of scope of the work, to get an idea of what goes on your personal taxes. So I like to ask, were you employed or were you self-employed? Because that gives me whether you're going to get a T4 because you were employed by someone else, or you have self-employment income, which is more complicated than a T4. So that tells me where the majority of the work is going to be, basically. I will ask if you have investments, because if you have investments, then generally they will generate slips for you. And sometimes, depending on the kind of investment, it's more complicated to calculate the impact on your taxes than just a regular slip. If you have an investment but they're in an RSP or a TFSA, then those don't count. I mean, they still count like they're investments, but they won't give you the same kind of slips, and there's not the same calculation for tax purposes. I also like to ask if you have rental income. If you have rental income, then that adds a layer of complexity to your taxes. We've got to calculate income and expenses, and usually there's a shared amount in there, so that is a good indication of scope of work. And I like to know if you have kids, because kids impact your taxes for sure. And usually if you have kids, then you also have like childcare or kids' medical expenses or that kind of thing. And then I want to know what province you live in, because each province has their own tax laws, and I will not do a Quebec tax return. So if you live in Quebec, then that's a deal breaker for me. But otherwise, I just like to know what province you're in. So those are my general upfront questions. That gives me the scope that I need to be able to give you a quote. And then from there, now I should say that the quote is the minimum amount that it's going to cost. And sometimes once we get into it, and sometimes some stuff was hidden that we didn't know about, and then it costs a little bit more if we have to deal with some bigger stuff. But generally, the quote is what it ends up costing. Then I send an engagement letter. It's just an outline of the scope of the work that we're going to do together, your responsibilities, my responsibilities. It's less of like a binding contract and more of just an agreement. So we're both really clear about what needs to happen. Then I send you an intake form, and it goes through just a list of all the usual questions that I need to ask, and it asks for personal information that I need for your taxes. So what's your full name, birth date, address, do you have kids, are you married, like all that stuff. It takes about 10 minutes to complete. I use Microsoft Forms, I think it's called, and it's just really quick. You can send me your answers that way, and then I get them as like an Excel spreadsheet, and it's super easy for me. From there, I just send you a list of requirements. So if you had employment income, I would send I need to see your T4 from your employer. If you had investments, then I would need to see the slips from investments, like T5s or T50008. Lots of T-slips. There are lots of T-slips involved. So I basically just give you a list of all the things that I'm going to need. You can get these ready in advance. You don't necessarily need to wait for the list. If you have income of any kind at all, you probably have to report it. It's more likely that you have to report it than you don't. So if you get income from an employer or from the government or from investments or dividends or any of that kind of thing, you're gonna get a slip for it. And so that slip is super important. Anything with a T and then a little, no, there's no dash, a T and then a number, or a T and then like RSPs, or yeah, all that stuff's important. It should say retained for income tax purposes on it. If you have interest expenses that are related to income in some way, you can usually deduct that, so it's a good idea to collect it. I generally recommend just collect all the things that you think are going to be relevant, and then as we discuss it, maybe some of it isn't relevant, but it's usually easier to have it all in one place than to go looking for it later. So I will send you the list of requirements, the things that I need from you to be able to sign or to file your taxes. I also have an authorization form that I need signed so that I can access your CRA account. And then I have all of that. Have you actually upload all that to a shared folder? I don't love emailing things back and forth, especially when it's like sensitive information, because email is not the most secure thing. So I use OneDrive, and we just have a little shared folder that we can upload stuff to, and it's better than email. And then from there, I will take the information that you've uploaded and I'll do your taxes. That's basically it. I just take it, I do your taxes. I ask you any questions that I have based on the information that I can see. If there's anything missing that I can see, I'll just send you a quick note and ask you to upload that. Then when I'm all done, I always send a copy of the tax return to my client before I file it. I just like having that check over, not so much that you're going to check my work, but just that you know your situation much better than me. So if something seems weird to you or you have a question about something, I'd much rather discuss it with you before I file than, a little while later having it come up that something was missed. So it's just an extra check to make sure that everything is accurate before it goes to the CRA. Then once that happens, I have you sign another form, because the CRA needs us to get a form signed to actually file your taxes. And then I'll file your taxes and send an invoice for the amount that you were quoted, or that we had already discussed. So that invoice is never a surprise. And that's the whole process, at least from my point of view. My services also include, like, if the CRA ever sent you a letter during the year related to the tax return that I filed, and you were like, I don't know what this is. It's basically gibberish. You could send it to me, and I would handle it for you. Yeah, because I think that's a big part of it, is just translating for the CRA. So yeah, that's the whole process from we don't know each other to your taxes have been filed. It's not going to be the same for all accountants, but I think broad strokes are very similar. So what can you get together early? Just all of the slips and the things with T's on them. And business income and expenses in a spreadsheet is good. Rental income and expenses, again, in a spreadsheet is good. Any medical expenses, donation receipts, child care, child medical expenses, that kind of thing. There's lots of other ones, but those are the main ones. So if you can get those all collected before you talk to your accountant, it will make life easier. I have included a free PDF to make life easier for small business owners who are sole proprietors. This time of year can be the most stressful, because if we haven't been doing our bookkeeping all year, or tax time can just be stressful for sole proprietors. So I've included a free PDF for small changes that you can make that have a huge impact for you and your business, especially at tax time. That link is in the description, so definitely get a copy of that for yourself. If you have any questions about this, taxes, anything, really, leave them for me in the comments, and I will definitely answer them for you. I'll see you tomorrow.